So I made some soda bread with roasted, tomatoes and green spinach for these guys. So hopefully they should enjoy.
Seems
Okay. So I made some soda bread with. So let's make a quick start in terms of what we are looking at discussing. So we're going into learning outcome 2 today, which is primarily, focused on understanding the components of digital environment. So this is the main bit that we are going to be looking at today, which is primarily to understand, when we do say digital technologies, yesterday we discussed that it is nothing but talking about, electronic components or gadgets or equipment which essentially allow us to connect various devices to the internet, and then obviously create, get or process information. So today we are going to be looking at a step further, wherein what we want to do is understand, after the evolution of what is digital technology, is evolution of computing and technology. What we want to be able to do is understand what are the various components of digital technology. So some parts of it we discussed yesterday, but briefly we'll go into a bit more detail, because this would involve asking us to understand what are the various types of hardware, software, applications which essentially help us in connecting or creating what is called a digital environment. So digital environment essentially is nothing but interconnection of devices, systems, or different type of platforms. So when I say if you buy a new mobile, unless you put a SIM into it, and then the mobile is registered with the provider, you put the SIM into it, then only you are able to become a part of the network or a cellular network. Similarly, when you say, for example, buy a new PC or a laptop, you install it, which means you open the physical hardware. After you've done away with the packaging and everything, you install the operating system on it. And after the operating system is installed, one of the first things that you do is connect it to the internet. And that connectivity to the internet allows you to download the updates for certain softwares like Windows or MS Office or some of the softwares that you've installed from the operating system. And once they are downloaded, updated and running, then you are connected to the digital world. That means you're connected to maybe social media sites, you're able to browse the internet, you're able to, if you're using, for example, a subscription of Office 365, you're able to create documents or, send emails by going on to the browser. So that is where the digital connectivity comes in. And when we talk about the environment, that is what the environment is all about. So it's all about interconnected systems, platforms, technologies, and devices which enable you to actually do communication through the routes of using some of this equipment. So when we send an email, you need a device to be able to compose that email. Now, in the olden days, if I go back, when people in the senior positions used to have secretaries. So what they used to do is if they were looking at sending out a letter or a memo or a minutes of the meeting, they used to call a PA or a secretary, and then they used to dictate notes. And those were then typed out using a typewriter, and then copies of that were put up on the notice board or sent across, to other offices or branches. Now, sometimes they used to do carbon copies because there was no photocopier at that point in time. And I'm talking 30 years back, 30, 40 years back. So obviously typewriting was done, and obviously the typewriting had carbon copy in it. So carbon paper was there, and then it used to create multiple copies. If you move 10 years ahead, what tended to happen then was the typewriters gave away to PCs, and that is where printing also came about. And then you could print or create a document once and print multiple copies of it. Then, with the coming in of the internet, you were able to send that document across on the internet using hypertext, protocol. You were able to send those documents, images, or say, for example, different types of data across via email, and they would have been received on the other side, the recipient, and they were able to open and see that document or that picture or diagram or whatever you had sent. So you see, from typewriting to creating documents on the PC, then at some stage with the enablement of internet, being able to send it on email, and today we are able to do that same part of it, but we are able to do it through multiple devices. So you can send an email through tablet, your phone, thin clients, shared PCs or networks that you go across to, like in cyber cafes or when you're at the airport and you're, using a public PC or a PC on a public network. Those are thin clients which don't allow you to store a lot of data. Examples of that are Chromebooks, which only are browsing devices. You can do that from a smart TV today. So these are all types of devices which allow you to connect and create some sort of a connect with different equipments that you're using, across this particular spectrum. So when we do collectively talk about all these technologies, systems, platforms, they are termed as what is called digital environment or digital technologies. And they can be anything that we have read, seen, used, from things like websites, social media platforms. You're looking at mobile applications. You're looking at applications which reside on the cloud server or on the cloud. You're looking at search engines and various other software applications which we use today. I think the most common that we are looking at using on the cloud nowadays is Google Docs, Microsoft Office. I'm using Zoom, for example. There are other softwares like Team and some of the others which other companies provide, like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. You have WebEx from Cisco. They are all softwares which are using different forms of application to be able to get connectivity. And once you are connected, you're able to transmit data. So as of now, I'm transmitting audio. I'm also transmitting video. And
Yeah.
for those of you who have the camera switched on, you're also transmitting video in the form of, live video, which is primarily all going through this connected platform.
Mhm.
So when we do talk about the word digital environment that we see here, digital environment will comprise of all the things that we are aware of today. So starting with, say, websites, you're looking at using Twitter, Facebook, which are basically social media apps. You're looking at mobile applications on your phone, which could be gaming applications. It could be productivity applications. It could be office applications. You're looking at using the internet or the browser on your PC or your Mac or on your phone, and they could be Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Safari, Internet Explorer, or Edge, as we call them today. They're all applications which allow you to get an interface and connection with the internet. Now, the use of word platforms, if I just quickly describe it here, platforms would mean platform would be an ecosystem. That means if you look at a PC, you buy a PC today, but you don't have an operating system on it, or you don't have a broadband or a Ethernet card in it, then it won't be of any use as a device because it is a standalone device which can do certain operations. But without the operating system, whether it's Linux, Unix, Windows, whatever you install, you would need that to be able to run the software. So when we do talk about a platform would be a set of applications, a set of, for example, hardware and a combination of some sort of, what they call functional applications, which will allow you to run the hardware. So when we do talk about platforms, we are talking about, systems which are connected. And these systems, when they are connected, they are able to give you access to more information or more processing power. Or let me put it this way, they are able to give you access to um, information which is going to be processed or synthesized in other systems. So if I look at giving an example of a platform, if you there's this word platform we've come across when you go across and travel through, say, rail. Now when you look at visualizing platform, what happens is when you are on a platform, that means you're on a platform like Windows, or you're on a platform like Mac, or you're on a platform like Unix. Now, these are platforms which basically are able to drive applications on other devices as well. Now, when you are on a Mac, you are able to interface with a PC on Windows, you're able to interface with a PC on Unix, or a server which is running Unix in the background. So, I'll give you an example. A website to a certain extent would be considered a platform if it has e-commerce application associated with it. That means I log into eBay, I go on to Amazon, I'm able to do browsing of the products or things that I want to buy. Then I have a payment system which is integrated into this platform or into this particular application, which allows me to complete my purchase. So I'm not just statically browsing, for example, for a product or a service, but I am able to purchase that service or a product as well. Now, this particular device, which is the application Amazon, for example, if I'm using, I'm able to go and browse a product or service. Then, if I like it, I'm able to pay for it using a payment platform or a payment system, not platform, payment system. Then, once I paid for it, I get a receipt immediately on my email. So that means there's another application which is installed on that platform, which is an invoicing application, which is able to instantly issue me an invoice. In parallel, you would also see a dispatch note or some sort of a notification coming to you, which will essentially inform that this product has been dispatched. Now, this particular platform that we use as Amazon has so many applications working in the background. Then on top of it, if you understand that once you bought this product, it triggers an email or some sort of a communication to a vendor or a supplier which would be providing that particular product to Amazon. And then they would also have this connectivity to an inventory management system, which would tell them exactly that in the warehouse, these many items are there. If one gets sold, then the inventory system is also updated. Then it informs the shipper that, okay, this particular product, which has been ordered by the customer, needs to be shipped to this location. So as you can see in the background, if you visualize this as an example of digital technologies, what you're able to see is that there is a lot of different types of components, platforms, ecosystems, software applications are all working seamlessly to service one order. So when we talk about Amazon, I can say it is a marketplace or a platform. Now, within that, you have invoicing, you have dispatch, you have warehousing, you have inventory management, you have some sort of a confirmation which helps you understand that your product has been paid for, and it also has a payment system on it. Now, this would be termed as a platform. So when we talk about an e-commerce website like Amazon, although we are talking about a simple website, but the moment I say e-commerce and I start looking at the back end of it in terms of how it works, you're going to see that it is a complex combination of a lot of working of software and applications using the hardware, which would allow the customer orders to be serviced. And that is where, when I talk about Amazon, they would be treated as what are called, say, a hub, which can integrate and use a lot of software, a lot of applications which are installed on the systems, and these can then inform, update, and confirm what is happening in terms of transactions. Another example that I'll give you to move ahead with this would be if you look at a customer relationship management system, CRM. Now, CRM is a system which essentially has lots and lots of applications and various types of I would say so when I use the word application, I would say application and software integrated into it. Why do companies use CRM? Because CRM is able to give them connectivity to the website, give them connectivity to the customer, vendors, partners, suppliers. They would also have information about the company's products and services. And at the same time, this system has the ability to be able to communicate with other systems in the digital ecosystem, which means in the digital environment. So they can work together and help you do complex transactions, which could be related to payments, which could be related to delivery, inventory management, or other aspects of it in terms of forecasting and looking at planning, marketing, sales, administration, and that is why they would be termed as what are called platforms. Another example that you can look at for now would be enterprise resource planning systems, or ERPs. So these systems from SAP and Oracle and Microsoft, they are basically complex systems which are essentially platforms because they make use of applications, hardware, software, and they have the capability to be able to process abundant forms of different information and create meaningful reports and provide that dashboard to everyone in the organization. And that is why they will be termed as platforms. Now, when you include application, software, and platform, and I then give it a, say, for example, a name called ecosystem, that would mean that they are not just standalone devices which are working, but there will be a series of interconnected devices, and that is why the term ecosystem will come in. So it will involve different types of resources. They will all be independently working, but they can also be working together in unison to be able to produce an output, and that is why they will be termed as ecosystem. Now, a simple example of this I would give you is if you have a CRM system and that works within your organization, then all the users within the organization, which is staff, have access to the information. Now, they are using a platform because they work within one location and they are actually all on the same platform. But the moment I start to include suppliers, contractors, or people which are outside the organization and they are able to connect to this CRM system from outside, then I would term this as an ecosystem because they are also using the same system to be able to get information, update information. And in such cases, they are bringing their resources to be able to access that, which means they might have their own internet connection, they might have their own hardware. These hardware and software would be compatible and in terms of talking to the systems within the organization. And because there are different systems, different platforms, and different applications working together in unison, and when I say unison, they are working together to be able to produce output or provide information, then they will, because they are from different backgrounds or they are on different applications and they are using different type of operating systems, for example, then in such cases, that would be comprising what is called ecosystem. Now, with this basic understanding, what we are going to do is we are going to go into some of the assessment criteria to understand what are the various type of hardware solutions used in creating this digital environment. What are the various types of, so one is hardware. The second part we will look at is software, right? The third would be look at networks. And the fourth would be to look at how do we use hardware, software, and networks to create what is called advanced digital solutions. And then the merit and distinction criteria are essentially an extension of some of the tasks, wherein it says explains the benefit of using a network infrastructure or evaluate the impact of hardware on software, right? So sometimes we get to see, as an example, I will give you is that if you have a Windows PC or a Mac, essentially, and you install a latest version of the software, sometimes you feel that my PC is running slow or my Mac is running slow. The reason why that happens is because the software that you've installed on your operating system or on your hardware is a latest version and it requires more resources to be able to effectively work and works in a speedy or a faster fashion. So, for example, sometimes you see that PC's RAM or random access memory needs to be upgraded or hardware needs to be upgraded. Hardware means your hard drive is having less space to be able to install, say, Windows 11, or in some cases, you might need to change your graphics card or maybe your visual display card, video unit, because your resolution on the monitor, say, for example, you bought a monitor which is a large or a big Acer monitor or a Philips or a Samsung monitor, which is like a 49-inch and it has 5K or a 7K resolution. So when you look at a 5K resolution monitor, your resolution on your screen can be better in terms of you can go up to like 5,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. Now, if your graphics card in the machine or in a PC and a Mac is only supporting say 1920 by 1048 or 1040 resolution, then you would have a big monitor, but the fonts would be bigger, but the space that you get on the monitor in terms of display resolution will still not be there. So in such cases, you would see that there's an impact of hardware on software because your software is more up to date, but your hardware needs updating. So in such cases, people end up replacing that old display card with a high resolution graphics card, or in some cases, sometimes if your PC runs out of memory, you might have a 500 gigabyte hard drive, you might change it to 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte hard drive, which creates more space. And this allows you to run some of the applications or install some of the softwares. So evaluating the impact of hardware as on software would be looking at taking a few examples of where do you think you need to upgrade the hardware, or where do you need to think you need to upgrade the software because your hardware is fast or your hardware is slow, and both of them can work wonders depending on what application you're installing and what you're using. One good example that I'll give you from home is when you look at somebody using or saying I want to do gaming on a PC. Now gaming on PCs require a fast GPU, which is your graphics controller. It will require a faster processor, more RAM. Now the better you have in terms of these components, the fastest GPU or the fastest CPU or a better display monitor in terms of resolution and refresh time, you would feed that your PC is more responsive, and you're able to run some of these games and applications on your PC very quickly. For example, Fortnite, which is very popular with teenagers now as a game, or Call of Duty. You look at some of these games which are available on Xbox, PlayStation, and your PCs. You would generally see that if you have a slow PC, then the game runs slow. It is jerky. It takes a bit of time. There is a lag. And if you have a good monitor, a good CPU, or a faster graphics card, then NVIDIA or a GeForce graphics card, you're going to primarily see that your game is not laggy, or you're able to carry out some of these commands quite quickly. So those are the aspects that we need to look at primarily, when we look at covering some of this criteria related to evaluation of the hardware, and the impact of hardware and software that you have on the PC. Now, going into what we have discussed so far, say for example the digital environment, and obviously looking at some of the assessment criteria, let's go into and get a detailed idea of looking at what could be the key components of the digital environment. Now, when we do talk about the components of digital environment, as I mentioned, you cannot have just the hardware or just the software or just the applications forming or helping you form up a digital environment. So you need a combination of resources and devices to be able to say that you are actually having a digital environment. So when we do look at key components, a digital environment can only be formed if you have hardware, which means a PC, for example. I've written down a couple of examples. Now, if you have a PC, but you want to get onto the internet, if you don't have a router with you or a live internet connection, there is no way that you can go online. So in such cases, you would not be able to create a digital environment. Now, when you look at software, if you have a PC, I give you an example, and that PC is a bare PC, you don't have any form of operating system on it or applications on it, you won't be able to use it for the purposes that you bought. So if I remember 20 years, 25 years back, when some people bought PCs, they had Windows 3.1 on it. Or DOS operating system on it. So DOS operating system was, a black screen with the prompt, and you had to remember commands to be able to run it on a DOS disk operating system. There were not much graphics integrated to it. Most of the processing was primarily, done in the form of numbers or data. Now, when Windows was introduced, it introduced a graphical user interface wherein you could see things, you could move things about, and you could actually visually get feedback when you were working on the applications like Office or any sort of a, Paintbrush was one such application which was used to create, some sort of images on the Windows operating system. So without software, again, you're not able to run applications on your PC. So that means if you buy a PC, you need to have applications like disk operating system or a Windows operating system or a Mac operating system. Then when you want to connect various resources, that means you want to connect your PC to the home, your home PC to the office. You want to connect, say, for example, your PC in the house to, the PC that your son has or your daughter has, and you want some sort of a connectivity. You want your PC to be able to transmit data to your smart TV. You need some sort of a network. So obviously networks in home tend to be local area networks. When you are in a particular location in 2 or 3 different, say, levels, you could have wide area networks. And then in some cases, when these are connected across geographies or different cities, you would probably use a combination of WAN and LAN and a VPN to be able to allow users to connect to the office servers. So a lot of people get laptops and are working remotely from home, but in order to ensure that they are connected through a secure network, offices or companies would have VPNs, and they would need to give access to VPNs to be able to connect them to the office servers. Now, cloud-based services, again, today we just do not want to store data on our PC. If I'm going abroad, I want to access data. If your PC is shut down or closed, you won't be able to get access to the data. So obviously, when you store data on Gmail, your Google Drive, your Bbox or Dropbox or other such applications, it allows you to get access to that data anywhere in the world where you have access to a PC or some sort of internet services to be able to get hold of that data, because the data resides on the cloud. Then you look at software applications and compliances like cybersecurity. You have digital communication tools, for example, Microsoft Messenger. You had ICQ a couple of years back, but they have now gone away. And you have Slack, which is an office application which people use. Zoom. You have Microsoft Teams. You have WhatsApp, which are essentially more commonly used as applications to remain in touch. So if I have colleagues in other places in the office or in other places in other colleges, sometimes it's best to get in touch with through them through email and WhatsApp, because I can see their status, they're online, and obviously I can straight away message them. So when you look at the key components, these are the key components which make up actually the digital environment. So from my point of view, when we do talk about digital environment, these are the things that should come to your mind, and they would allow you to understand that what are the software, hardware, applications, platforms, systems which allow you to actually create what is called a digital environment. Now, how these component works, we are very clear that when you open a laptop, I gave you an example. If you buy a new laptop, you need to install it first. When I say install it first, it means not just physical install, but you will need to install an operating system on it. With the operating system being there, your applications are limited. You might then go on to the Google Play Store or buy some of the applications to run it on your laptop, and that would be running on the operating system, like the Office 365, gaming applications, productivity applications would be installed. When you want to connect to the internet, you would essentially look at putting or connecting to a network, and that will be by using or putting in a password for that network or a key for that network that and that allows you to get online. So you need to make these components and systems work, and they would essentially then allow you connectivity. Now, once you are connected and you're able to browse data, you are then able to get into the second level of usage, which is using the hardware, using the application, using the software to be able to, do functions or activities. That is what you bought the PC for or laptop for. So in some cases, if you say you buy a gaming PC, one of the things that you would do after the install of the gaming PC, download the games, would be to then connect to a network server and then play games with either your friends online, or you would play alone, the game if you're playing in a solo mode. And that would allow you to essentially start using the PC, because that is what the whole purpose was, that you bought a gaming PC because you wanted to do gaming online. Now, if we have to look at this as an example of how it will be used in offices, we would be able to look at usage of these devices and applications and softwares in order to be able to do or get work done. For example, if you have, say, if you work within an office, and one of the things that you do within administration is you look after answering a lot of customer queries via email, then there would be things that you would need to, in order for you to be able to answer these emails or quickly respond to customers, you would probably need connectivity with the CRM system. You might have that connected to your phone system so it's able to record calls. Use of AI could be there. applications like Otter AI, which allow you to now do automatic minutes of the meetings if you're discussing something on the phone, and they then get added or saved as a summary note on your system. And these are things which would be useful if you have these applications and software installed on the system, because they will make your work more easier and make you more productive. So I don't need to do minutes of the meeting. I don't need to take the notes separately. What will happen is the software will listen into the conversation, drop the key bullet points, and obviously they'll get appended to the customer contact that you've spoken to. And this way, these are things which will essentially be beneficial for the business. So when you do look at from an IT perspective, now if I was the IT manager in an organization or a small business or a medium business, one of the things that I would be looking at would be to say, if I do ask the organization to invest into a system or a software or a technology or an application, I would evaluate that part from a point of view of understanding how would this benefit the people working and using a particular software or application? How would this improve collaboration? How would this look at bringing productivity and efficiency to the work which the person is doing? Now, are these systems connectable or are these systems scalable, which means that what kind of applications, products, software they would be able to connect into if the company decides to buy something down the line, 1 year down the line? Will this system still work with that software and application? That is where you would need to look at longevity and scalability of the system. That means, can they work with Windows? Can they work with a Mac, for example, or Linux or Unix operating system? Now, in such cases, you would need to do a thorough evaluation to see whether these applications are compatible with some of the other different types of operating system. And then you would also look at evaluating them from a point of view of ensuring that they are systems which essentially work and are secure. That means they are essentially secure from any sort of hacking or threats which you could face because of cybersecurity, or for example vulnerability in the system. Now, Windows system, for example, when you have Windows, a lot of Windows PC require the installation of an antivirus software. So the reason why most companies would typically have Windows-based machines and or laptops or devices which connect to the system, the first thing that they will say is, if you connect an external USB or a drive into the hard drive of a company PC, you need to make sure that the one network administrators normally disable the USB ports, because they do not want an external data drive to be connected to the PC, which could make it vulnerable or introduce vulnerabilities into the network of the organization by introducing a malicious program or a virus. Now, if they do allow, sometimes you would see in organizations, if you go to the reception area or if you're in the waiting area, there are PCs which are available, but these PCs are standalone PCs. They're not connected to any network. They will have connectivity with the internet, but they will be standalone PCs. So if you use or connect any external device to it, the vulnerability or the threat of that in terms of data is only restricted to the standalone PC, but not the network. So in such cases, sometimes when you look at employing some of these applications, software, and connectivity related to networks part of it, what you're going to ensure is that there is security and compliance which these devices can be or systems can be used to configure, and that would allow nothing of no data or nothing to be compromised in the company's network, because the system is secure and has firewall, for example, or antivirus software or server version of softwares running, which will allow and detect these threats. And that is where you would essentially look at shortlisting something which is primarily ensuring that there is security and compliance related to anything external being connected to the company environment or company hardware or software applications. Now, with this, let's go into some of the assessment criteria. So the first one talks about hardware. In this, what we want to understand is what are the various types of hardware which we can say are going to help us to create a digital environment. So when we do talk about hardware, there's a table that I've done which summarizes, the kinds of hardware that we want to understand. And when we use the word hardware, what does it mean? Hardware means a device, or it means let's say a PC or any sort of essentially a device. Essentially, when I say what is hardware, hardware is essentially any sort of device, in IT terms. So when we do
Yeah.
talk about computer hardware, or when we do talk about devices, we are basically using the same word interchangeably because they are going to refer to internal or external devices or equipment essentially, which allow us to perform some functions. Now, when I say keyboard, it's an input device. When I say mouse, it's an input device because it's allowing us to create an input into the software or the application. When I talk about a printer or a scanner, it's an output device because when you print, it prints out an output for you in terms of color printout or a black and white printout. So
Yeah, it's tangible.
devices, yeah. So devices can be input devices, output devices, processing devices. So if I say a hard drive, if I say a pen drive or a flash drive, it's a storage device. It stores data, right? If I talk about a telephone, whether it's a telephone connected as a headset to the PC, I talk about a camera connected as a device to the PC or a Mac, or if I talk about speakers, for example, they would be an output device, but also a device which will be helping us process information. You connect a camera, it is able to detect your voice and your image, and that allows you to transmit visually image as well as sound across to a different platform or a person across the room or even globally. So, depending on when we are trying to create a digital environment, what we need to be able to do is understand and classify devices. These devices can be input, output, storage, communication, or processing devices. Now, hardware can also be internal, external. So if you have an external hard drive, like a portable hard drive, you have an internal hard drive, these would also be classifications that you would keep in mind because you would need to understand how do you create a digital environment and what are the hardware devices which allow you to create this digital environment. So I've listed them down as a table, quite easy to understand. Mobile devices, desktop based devices, storage, backup methods or backup devices. You have NAS, network access storage, you have hard drive, you have cloud backup, then you have servers, which are obviously working in the background, but it allows multiple number of PCs to be connected or Macs to be connected. And then you have network devices, which are basically of 4 or 5 types. You have switches, routers, hubs, and firewalls. So these devices allow you to connect to internet or broadband, create connectivity. And when you look at connectivity across a lot of devices, if you have a router at home, it supports up to 50 to 60 devices. But if you are connecting more than that in the office, you would need boosters, you would need switches, which are, or essentially, Ethernet hubs or switches, which are intelligent devices because they're able to boost the signal. They do not drop the bandwidth of the connectivity, and in some cases have secure applications running on it to be able to ensure that nobody is able to tap into these connections when we are talking about virtual networks. So that's the first assessment criteria, understanding, asking us to understand and just outline what could be the hardware devices which allow you to create a digital environment. And I've done a couple of slides to explain some of these devices that I mentioned, and you could go through these to, read in a bit more detail about hardware devices. Now, if I go into solutions, the second one that we are talking about is outline types of solutions, software solutions that can be used to create a digital environment. Again, I've done a table here. Now, in when we say software or software related solutions in context of IT or basically digital environment, they would be data, programs, or applications essentially which allow you to drive the hardware. That means they allow you to essentially use the hardware. So in such cases, we are going to be looking at different types of software solutions, which could be office based, bespoke solutions, collaborative tools. You have creative and design solutions. You have database management software. You have web and application development software, and then you have security software. Now, without looking at this particular column, if I say, for example, talk about some of the examples that we want to look at in terms of what these are, we could basically look at using our memory and see, because we use all of these on a daily basis. So when I talk about office-based software, you're looking at things like MS Office, you're looking at central calendaring, email software, you're looking at softwares which are essentially related to allowing you to do basically the basic functions of running a hardware. So when I say office based software, what comes to your mind apart from the MS Office? I can look at things like an accounting software, like Sage or QuickBooks or Intuit, which are essentially softwares which allow you to run or create invoices or look at, inventory. So there could be softwares which are related to inventory management, finance side of things, in administration, marketing, for example. You might be using a software like Ladder, or a software to post a lot of content on social media platforms. They will all be office-based softwares which are going to be installed on the hardware. Then I say
Mm-hmm.
bespoke software. Obviously, when I say bespoke software, these could be bespoke softwares which are essentially, because I've given some clues here. So bespoke software would be software which allows you to do a specific type of function. Now, if I say finance and I give an example of invoicing software like Sage, now this software is a bespoke software which will also allow you to do, say, and the finance manager will be able to look at drawing out reports, submit VAT returns, look at generating, using it for payroll, for example, at the end of the month, making sure that all employees get employee slips and salaries are processed. It could be CRM systems, because when you buy into a system like HubSpot, Salesforce, Zoho, what you're doing is essentially using a bespoke system to be able to run it for your organization. You are maybe using it for marketing, sales, administration, and you would do a lot of customization to it to ensure that this system helps you become more productive and obviously more efficient, and is able to share information across the organization. So when we do talk about HR, there would be an HR management software or Orange system, for example. You look at big companies in the UK which essentially provide HR systems. These are softwares which allow you to look at leave planning for employees, performance appraisals, look at pay hikes or pay reviews, incentive schemes, and in general, disciplinary action or any such things, including storing of information related to employee records, can be all done on the HR system, because and employees would have access to it, and they are able to update, say, for example, their holidays or other bits that they have in terms of documentation. And this would allow the department, assuming if you work within a big company and there are lots of employees, the HR department would need that software rather than having manual handling of all the files and creation of records. They would deploy some sort of a software in it. So in general, when we do talk about various types of software solutions which can be used to create digital environment, we need to be aware of some of these, and these solutions essentially, would be allowing you to run the hardware, plus also run applications to be able to get desired output in terms of information, knowledge, or data. Now, collaboration softwares, we are using Google Workspace, Office 365, you use Teams, Slack, Zoom. These are all, collaboration softwares. Now, when you come to creative art and design, you use Photoshop, you use Adobe Premiere, you use, for example, now there are lots of different applications which are available, apart from what initially were available through Adobe or Corel Draw. These are design software applications which allow different type of applications to be done. So for example, if you're an architect and you're creating a design for a house, then you would need access to CAD and CAM software which will allow you to use it, and they would be basically termed in the category of creative and design software. So you need to be aware. So when I talk about websites would also have different types of software. You have a normal website, which is a static website. That means you're only able to browse data. But the moment you add e-commerce to it, you need to have an e-commerce engine in the background like Shopify, Wix platform, or WordPress platform. These are platforms which will allow essentially multiple applications to be run and integrated with a static website, which will allow customers to then come in, browse, engage, buy, pay, get an invoice, know the delivery and shipping mechanism, and this would allow them to comprehensively interact with a shopping, website. And then you have security softwares, antivirus, firewalls, encryption software that you would use. And there are a couple of them. So Norton and McAfee, there is Panda antivirus. There are lots of different softwares which have come about. Viper from Microsoft. They are essentially, softwares which will protect and run in the background to protect any vulnerabilities on application software which are running on a particular device, like a PC or a Mac. And they would essentially stop any malicious programs or any other type of, let's say, cyber attacks to be defended by the hardware, because these softwares have the ability to be able to detect these activities, and then they are able to pop up alerts or, obviously disable them, thereby protecting your data and your hardware and software, which is, running a particular application. So, in a nutshell, you should be aware of what could be the software solutions that help you create what is called a digital environment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, a couple of slides that I've given primarily to explain some of the things that we have covered in the table. You can read, and they would give you a bit more detail of what we have discussed. Now, the third one, so after covering hardware, going to software, the third one that we are looking at now is networks. Now, at some stage, what you're going to do is you have a hardware, you have some of the applications, you have some of the softwares, but at some stage you want to connect now to a network. So when you look at connecting different devices together, whether it's a tablet, phone, PC, Mac, to a server, or different types of PCs, bringing them all onto a similar network, you would need an environment, and that environment is going to be called a network. So a network would be essentially created in the organization or in a particular location, depending on the size and scale of the operation. And there you would be looking at interconnecting computers and various other devices, which would be able to share resources, communicate, and exchange data. Now, give you an example. If you work within an organization and there are lots and lots of information available, so sometimes in companies, what they do is they create an intranet. Now, if you are a customer selling website or a customer selling organization selling a lot of products and services to customers, and you as an employee within the organization need to know about a lot of products and services which the company sells, the company would create maybe a site called intranet, which is a form of a website which only employees can access from within the company premises, but they will have information about models, specifications, brochures, flyers, and details about the product which you might need from time to time when speaking or pitching your products and services to customers. So in such cases, that kind of a central platform which the IT department creates is called the intranet. Now, if you have data that is stored within your company, but you would need access to that data, say, for example, you need the brochures and flyers of those products, and you're outside the office. So, how would you connect to the office? An office in that case would enable some sort of a VPN or a virtual private network. You would be able to log into that VPN, and using that VPN, you'd be able to connect to the office intranet, and from there you'd be able to download these documents or browse this information. Now, how is this possible? This is possible by creation of a network only, because you need to access data from another device which has these resources available, and in order for you to be able to access it, you need to be able to connect to that particular device. And how that connection can be done? You need to get that connection done through a network. A simple example that I would give you, literally, if you have to visualize it, for example, you're buying a house, and in the house you have two or three, say for example, bathrooms, and you have gas and heating somewhere in the utility of the house. From there, if you see all the plumbing, all the pipes to the water and everything is going into each of these bathrooms. Now, how does the water which comes into the house centrally gets routed to the other places in your house is basically through piping or connections which are created by a plumber, and that allows you to essentially get the delivery of when you open the tap, the water flows. You know, so if you imagine that as a connection, but on a virtual basis within the office amongst devices, would be something which you're trying to do. A network of pipes or a network of some sort of piping structure that you will create. But in the case of a network, it will be done through wireless and the use of Cat5 or now Cat8 type of cables within the office, which allows you to connect various devices and various types of devices and bring them onto a particular network. Now, this is where you're going to be looking at the creation of a digital environment wherein you are looking at putting a lot of computers, devices onto a same network, which are able to store, share, and communicate and exchange data. Now, there are different types of networks which can be created depending on your requirement. So what I've done is I've listed out, 6 types of networks which we know, which we can create depending on the organization, size, and scale of the operation. Now, local area networks are small networks essentially which are within a small geographical area. Now, you have a LAN in your home because you have a router. You have that in the office if the office is in a single location or a single floor. And you could also have that within a school or an office which is within a particular building. So here the network is a local area network because it only allows the PCs, devices within that particular premises to be able to connect to each other. Now, the moment we talk about a larger geographical area, which is like a multiple number of LANs, would be wide area network. An example of this would be UK Versity has an office in Manchester, but it also has an office in Salford. So if you have to connect the two offices together because they're not in the same physical location, they're separated by 6-7 miles. In such cases, what we will need to do is create a wide area network, which will be in a particular city, and that wide area network would be using lease line or cloud-based connectivity to connect the two offices together. And when the two offices are connected, any device which is within the network of those offices would be able to connect to each other. And this will be called a wide area network. A wireless LAN would be when you have a router. Now, if I go back 20 years back, routers were quite expensive and people used to connect, PCs and other devices, mostly PCs in their house, through something called a switch. That means it was a wire running from the switch to your PC, and that is how connectivity was possible. But as wireless technology was invented, wireless fidelity, that allowed routers to have a 4-port hub as well as a wireless transmitter, which allowed you to transmit signal in a particular location, and as long as you had the key for it or a personal key for it, which is called the web key, you were able to connect to the network and you were able to browse the internet. So wireless routers can be used in locations, in small locations or within houses, within premises, within offices, where you are able to wirelessly also connect to the network and bring devices together. Then you have what is called a personal area network. These are short range networks typically which can be created where devices have Bluetooth as a technology. So when you have an iWatch, you connect your iWatch to your phone. You have, say, for example, certain types of devices, like if you're using a synthesizer with your guitar or an amp with your on with a phone, or for example a wireless speaker with a phone or an iPod, you are able to connect this through Bluetooth. You look at your car, you are able to use your smartphone hands-free within your car because your car has a Bluetooth technology receiver, and your phone has also a Bluetooth receiver. They are able to connect with each other, and that allows you to create a small network which primarily works in about 30 feet or a 30-meter zone. And in such cases, these networks which are created through Bluetooth technology, like you use a wireless mouse, but actually when you say it's a wireless mouse, it's actually a Bluetooth mouse. So it connects your Bluetooth mouse to a Bluetooth device on your PC or Apple Mac, and then it allows you to connect the keyboard or the mouse without the wires. And that is a personal area network. Now, a metropolitan area network is a network which covers a wide variety of areas. It is a bigger network than LAN and WAN. And in such cases, if you're looking at covering vast areas wherein you want connectivity across buildings and across locations, then in such cases, a MAN is actually created, which is called a metropolitan area network. If I look at University of Manchester or look at University of Salford or Metropolitan University, obviously they can invest into something called a MAN, which means that because these universities have campuses in 10, 15, kilometers and they are spanning, they could have one particular department in IT managing and creating that network. But sometimes MAN is not done because of cost implications and vulnerabilities. But generally speaking, when you have branch offices of big companies, located in a bit bigger geography or a area, then in such cases, these offices or locations would have what is called a metro area network. That would mean that they would have buildings connected, or as we call them, managed networks. Buildings are connected, and these buildings would have the same connectivity and network across the board, whether they are based in Manchester or they are based in Birmingham or someplace else. The networks would be all connected. A virtual private network is a network which basically allows remotely connection of people to the main network of the office. And this network is primarily secure. So sometimes you would see employees get a VPN key every time they connect to a network or want to connect. They need to generate a code, and that code allows encryption. With that encryption, they are able to connect into the network through their home network or a public access a network and go back into their office network, but essentially have security features enabled into it so that no hacking or vulnerabilities are open. And this is where you would need networks as an example to be able to create a digital environment. And then in one or two subsequent slides, I've given different types of networks. Now, networks are created on what are called topologies. So, have you heard about the meaning called topology?
I have heard about it, but I'm not quite sure what is it
Okay, so
at the moment.
topology is basically, a mathematical term or a geometrical term, which basically means that, you're looking at different geometrical shapes. So when we look at creating networks, there are different types of topologies or layouts, essentially called, as we call them, which are used to create these networks. So networks can be of 5 different types. They can have a different type of structure or or let's say a diagram or a geometrical shape, and they would be termed as star, bus, ring, mesh, and hybrid. Now, these devices, when I connect them in single line of communication, that means they are face to face. Sometimes, I give you a simple example is that when you are trying to configure your TV remote with, say, for example, if you bought an Amazon Fire TV or something like that, and you want to configure that remote with your TV, what you have to do is you have to point it in a straight line to the infrared sensor, and that allows the device to be configured. So when you look at things like single line of communication or straight line of communication, which basically allows networks to be visible or devices in the network to be visible to each other before they can start communicating, then in such cases you will look at what is called a bus network. Now, these are basically different types of designs which have been created in order to ensure that the network design is suitable or appropriate for a particular type of office or for a particular location. And that is what we talk about when we do talk about topology. So topology is nothing but a symmetrical or a geometrical shape in which how these networks would be essentially created. So a point to
Yes.
point or a peer to peer network looks like this. A bus network has a single line of communication running through it, and then there'll be branches to connect different computers. When you look at going to a computer lab or a library, you would see that they are all installed in a central way or in one line, wherein it's easy for the networking to happen. So
Yeah,
some of
I
these two,
remember these. Yeah.
so these two,
When I was studying level 2 IT, I remember we took these structures.
Correct.
I have an idea about them. Yeah.
Sure. So these are type of structures which are basically created to keep in mind scalability, performance, and cost within the organization when a network has to be put in. Now,
Yeah.
network types can also be different ways of classifying. You have wired and wireless, you have Bluetooth, fiber optic, mobile, and satellite. So sometimes when we do talk about WAN would utilize a satellite network or a satellite dish to be able to connect two offices together, because one of the offices in Manchester, the other is in Birmingham. It would use wireless spectrum, which would be able to transmit across a wide range of area, and in such cases, you would have these signals being transmitted even through satellite. Now, a good example of that would be Starlink, which is a network which essentially is basically deployment of 12,000 satellites in the space, and it allows connectivity to happen across the world or the globe, and that is a satellite network. So at my home, I'm using Starlink, and Starlink is a satellite internet because the internet is directly coming from the satellites, and satellites across the globe are all connected, which are providing connectivity. So there are different types that you can go through, and it will give you an idea of how these are used to create digital environments. That was the third assessment criteria. The last one that we want to talk about is how do we access advanced digital solutions. So I know that we have learned about hardware, software, and networks, but how are they all going to be then used to be able to create what are called advanced digital solutions? Now, when we do talk about advanced digital solutions, what do we mean by that? If I say that, okay, how do I use hardware, software, and networks to be able to create these advanced digital solutions? Now, these are solutions which are essentially going to be looked at from a business perspective, wherein a business, as an owner or as a company, decides that, okay, I need to buy so many PCs, I need to buy the server, I need to do this, or I need to do that. That's fine. But why are they looking at investing into technology? They are looking at investing into technology because they're looking at building capabilities in the organization. They want to use technology to be able to create benefits and productivity, for employees, which then would be able to offer these services to their customers in a faster and quicker way. Now, when we talk about advanced digital solutions, what we're talking about is referring to cutting edge technologies that can help in automation, that can help in increasing productivity, that can help in making things in a precise and quality way. This would also include things which would help companies maybe streamline operations. It might enhance customer experiences. Now, a simple example that I would give you is, why do you think companies spend a lot of money on creating a website? Now, a lot of companies spend a lot of money, thousands and hundreds of pounds, even millions of pounds in creating a website, is because they feel that this particular site or this particular resource is going to provide extensive information to its customers, and this is where the customers would actually start their interaction with. So maybe spending on the website and spending on it in terms of the latest technology, infrastructure, graphics, making it fast, making it secure, and maybe adding functionalities like a chatbot, or for example e-commerce engine, optimizing the website. Now these are all things which companies would do because they would want their website to be found easily. They would want the website to be an extensive repository of resources which customers would ask or seek questions or answers for. And in such cases, investing into creating an advanced website would be one of the key measures for that organization. Now, when they do create that, what they're going to do is make sure, if I'm creating a website right now by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, would be, or pounds, would be, that I use the latest technology and the latest systems which would essentially make it cutting edge. That means it would be standing apart from competition. Now, when we do talk about these in detail, and if I now from generalization go into a specific example, we look at just as a sticking to the example of a website, if I show you an example right now, and we go to say UK Versity's website only, let me just share the screen. You would see that on our website, we have integrated lots of different features simply because what we want to do is use advanced digital solutions. Now, you're on the home page, you're able to see a couple of things. One, there is a chatbot which is connected to the CRM, as you can see here. So if I type something here, I'm able to straight away respond to this particular chatbot, and somebody in the background is able to pick this up, and you would see that can respond to it. And this response would straight away come in to the user, here. So if I put some of the things across which is asking me, and what I would do is once I've answered some of the questions, it would get me connected to somebody, and that particular person would be able to, speak to the person. And as you can
Yeah.
see, this chat has now gone in to the operator. For example, somebody in the background. And if the operator says hi and I say hello, the full interaction is happening in the background. Now, this
Yeah.
is not something that you get to see in all websites, right? So this is introduction of advanced digital solutions. What is the solution? A live chatbot which allows you to interact with a personnel in the organization. If you have a question, so I want, say for example, if I put this way, I want to know about the artificial intelligence course. Now, this has gone in as a response to the person, and then the person can respond. As you can see, there's a response coming back straight away, and it's live, right? Now,
Yeah.
this is a simple version of the chatbot, but if it's an advanced version, what can also happen is that in this advanced version, somebody can send across, a flyer or brochure, anything to do with anything to do with the, say, for example, the latest, brochure which the person would want, and that can also be shared across, to the customer. So, for example, in the background, I've uploaded a brochure, and you would see this brochure would come up here straight away for the user. So I can click
Yeah.
on this and this brochure would open. Now, this is an example of advanced digital solution which is integrated to the website. The second part you can look at is there is a chatbot integrated. So I can straight away message to somebody, in the company, and that would go across, by WhatsApp, because this is a, live channel. So obviously, so I'm saying I'm doing a demonstration of advanced digital solution, and you would see that this message has gone across to the person in the organization, and they would pick it up. The other bit that I
Yeah.
could do is I could do it, I could, if I don't want to ask somebody, or I just want to look at doing my research on the internet, so I would say, what is the course, or say, for example, is there a course offered on artificial intelligence?
Mhm.
Right. This is something which I'm asking the chat on the website, and it is able to give me an answer. Yes, there's a course available, which is the level 7 diploma in artificial intelligence, and this is the course. Okay, what is the course fees? So the course fees, obviously it says I don't know the course fees, but you can call this number or find out, by sending an email. Now, I'm also asked a question that can you send me a link of that page? Obviously, it's not able to do so. And then what I will say is, how do I connect to the operator? Now, this is what is called the integration of advanced digital solutions. So on the website, you could have a simple website, but on the website, you could also have a chatbot. You could have the ability to be able to connect to the company. You have different ways through which you can call the organization, email the organization, chat with somebody on the organization. And in the other aspects of this is that can I buy a course online? And so can I purchase a course on the website? So as you would see is that in this case, it will give you an answer that yes, you can purchase the course online and you have the options to make payment. Now, so this is not a static website, but a website which allows you to even purchase a course online. Now, if I look at randomly just looking at one of the courses and I look at buying this course online, I can go and buy this course. This has an e-commerce engine enabled. So this is a deployment of an advanced digital solution using lots of different technologies, things like payment systems, things like e-commerce system, things like chatting, a chatbot which is integrated to the website, and all this allows the customer to get on with what they are trying to do with regards to subscribing to a course or buying to the course. Now, this is an example of how you would deploy hardware, software, applications to be able to create an advanced digital environment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So this is a live example in terms of how, people would essentially look at, interacting with something on the website. So if I want to buy this through PayPal, I can check out and I can, if I want, say, for example, a voucher code, assuming this is buying through PayPal. But if I go back for a minute and if I had a promotion code, which I can provide. So if I type say 50, for example, and apply, will it give me a discount? No, this code is not valid. So I can even have selective codes being given to customers who are looking at buying this product on a discount, but that discount might not be available to all the customers, but to a particular customer who is essentially, being given this code can actually type it in, and that would allow this customer to buy this course at a cheaper price. Now, this is an example of what is called the advanced digital solution. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So there could be lots of different examples that you can think of in terms of how these solutions could be deployed and how they can be useful for business. And that is what you would need to cover primarily, in the last assessment criteria, which is 2.4. Now, I have also given an example of a solution for a company which is looking at using computer-aided design and manufacturing. So when you look at engineering companies or companies which are essentially selling different forms of equipment, for example, you decide to order a number or a registration plate for your house. If your number of the house is, say, you want your house to be having a display number plate, or for example, a name. For example, your house's number is say 3 Universal Square, and you want that to be created in a metal sheet and things like that. What you will do is order that to a company. The company will essentially create a design, and then they would use CAD and CAM manufacturing to be able to cut out that design and obviously then provide that to you in the form of whatever thing that you ask for, whether you want it in metal, plastic with a lighted sign, and they would use computer aided design to be able to create that. And that would mean at some stage the designing will be done by the programmer on the computer. Once it is created, it is then transferred from the computer to a instruction to the machine who would use the instructions to be able to create that design, cut out the metal, and once it is done, then the engineers would actually weld out and obviously create and polish and everything and then send that over to you via the post. But that would involve the use of computer machines and equipment to be able to create this for the customer in the way they want it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So there are lots of different ways you can think of an example of how, depending on hardware, software, and applications that we talked about in terms of network, and that would allow you to essentially cover this particular part of the task. Okay, so this
It's a
brings
bit.
us to the end of today's discussion, which is to understand the components of digital environment and how do we use software, hardware, and networks to be able to create, a digital environment. Any questions?
Yeah. No, everything is clear.
Good stuff. So I will
Yes.
send across a copy of this the recording today to you just in a couple of minutes. And then we will meet up next, the next session that we have. Let me have a quick look. So the next session is on Monday, 21st. Okay, again
Yeah.
at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
take
Rahman,
care.
very much.
Enjoy
Thank
everybody
you.
the rest of your day. And then if you have any questions or queries, you can post that in the WhatsApp group. Otherwise, I will see you on Monday.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rahman, very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
You too. Bye,
Very much.
Promise. Bye, Clement. Bye, Shaima. Take care.